Hi all, today we are going to study about the exercises that are given in the last section of our first science chapter, chemical reactions. So we are going to complete that whole exercises. First question, which of the statements about the reaction below are incorrect? And here a particular reaction is given, 2 PbO plus carbon gives 2 Pb plus carbon dioxide. You need to identify which statements about oxidation and reduction are incorrect. So in the options A, lead is getting reduced, option B, carbon dioxide is getting oxidized, C, carbon is getting oxidized, D, lead oxide is getting reduced. We have studied this reaction yesterday. We said that what is oxidation? Addition of oxygen is oxidation and removal of oxygen is reduction. And in terms of hydrogen, what is oxidation? Removal of hydrogen is oxidation and addition of hydrogen is reduction. So here 2 PbO is converted into lead or Pb. There removal of oxygen happens. So we can say that this PbO is reduced and carbon combines with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and carbon is oxidized. So key concepts. So in the question, lead is getting reduced. No. Carbon dioxide is getting oxidized. No. Carbon is getting oxidized. Yes, that is true. Lead oxide is getting reduced. That is also true. So C and D are the right answers for this, but it is not in the is incorrect. Okay, which of the following statement is incorrect is the question. So A and B is incorrect and C and D are correct. So option 1 is the correct answer, that is A and B is incorrect. We can look for the explanation. Key concept, this question is based on the redox reactions. Oxidation is loss of electrons or gain of oxygen and reduction is gain of electrons or loss of oxygen. Important shortcut, if a substance loses oxygen it is called a reduction and if a substance gain oxygen it is called oxidation. So what is oxidation? Oxidation means addition of oxygen or loss of electrons or loss of hydrogen. So electrons, in terms of electrons and hydrogen it is same, that is loss or removal of electrons or removal of hydrogen is oxidation, whereas in terms of oxygen, oxidation means addition of oxygen and reduction is the opposite of this, that is addition of hydrogen or addition of electrons or removal of oxygen is reduction reaction. Step by step answer, identify the change in the reaction. 2 PbO plus carbon gives 2 Pp plus carbon dioxide. Lead oxide becomes lead and carbon becomes carbon dioxide. Analyze each substance. Lead oxide PbO gets converted into lead Pb. Therefore PbO loses oxygen. Loss of oxygen is equal to reduction. So lead oxide is reduced. Simple. Statement A, lead is getting reduced. Incorrect wording. Actually Pb2 plus in PbO is reduced to Pb. Carbon, C converts into carbon dioxide. Carbon gains oxygen. Carbon gains oxygen and gain of oxygen is oxidation reaction. And I think the video was not seen because due to some technical errors. I hope the first section was not available. This is nothing to worry. First we studied about the chemical reaction, this one, and oxidation we said that loss of electrons or gain of oxygen or loss of hydrogen is oxidation and reduction is the opposite of this, that is gain of electrons or gain of hydrogen or loss of oxygen is reduction. And coming to this, identify the reaction. In this reaction, lead oxide PbO becomes lead and carbon becomes carbon dioxide. And here in the first section, lead oxide is converted to lead. Lead oxide is reduced. So lead is getting reduced is an incorrect statement in the question. and carbon is converted into carbon dioxide. Carbon gains oxygen. Gain of oxygen is oxidation. So carbon is oxidized. Statement carbon dioxide is getting oxidized is incorrect, and carbon dioxide is already fully oxidized, not undergoing oxidation. Statement carbon is getting oxidized is correct. We can see this clearly in this statement, that is lead oxide PbO is reduced to Pb and carbon is oxidized to carbon dioxide. Check statement D. PbO to Pb is reduction. Lead oxide is getting reduced. That is also correct statement. Identify the incorrect statement. A and B are incorrect and C and D are correct. Important points for exams. Always track oxygen transfer in such questions. Remember, metal oxide to metal is an example for reduction because removal of oxygen happens. And non-metal plus oxygen is oxidation because addition of oxygen occurs. So write clearly, loss of oxygen is reduction and addition of oxygen is oxidation. Common mistakes to avoid: confusing lead with PbO, lead oxide, saying carbon dioxide is oxidized, it is already oxidized, not mentioning oxygen transfer clearly, forgetting it, justifying your answer. Final answer, both format in the reaction 2PbO plus carbon gives 2Pb plus carbon dioxide. PbO loses oxygen to form lead, hence it is reduced, and carbon gains oxygen to form carbon dioxide, hence it is oxidized. Therefore, lead is getting reduced is incorrect statement and carbon dioxide is getting oxidized is incorrect. Correct option A and B. A and B are wrong. If you want, I can continue with question 2 in the same topic style. Okay. What is second question? Fe2O3 plus 2Al gives Al2O3 plus 2Fe. The above reaction is an example of, options are combination reaction, double displacement reaction, decomposition reaction and displacement reaction. And we can see the explanation here. You need to identify the type of chemical reaction. Actually, we have studied it earlier, right? What happens here? This is a displacement reaction, right? Because aluminum displaces iron from this Fe2O3, because I think aluminum is more reactive than iron. So Al2O3 plus 2Fe is formed, and this will be an example for displacement reaction. Okay, let's see the explanation. This question is about types of chemical reactions. Important types to remember. Combination reactions. What are combination reactions? Two or more substances combined together to form a particular compound is called a combination reaction, or two or more substances combined together to form one product is an example for combination reaction. What is decomposition reaction? Where one compound splits into two or more simpler substances is an example for decomposition reaction in the presence of heat or light or energy. And what are displacement reaction? A more reactive element displaces a less reactive element. We have studied this earlier. Double displacement reaction is those reactions in which exchange of ions occurs between the compounds. So those reactions in which exchange of ions occurs between the compounds is example for or is called as double displacement reactions. Key idea: more reactive metal displaces less reactive metal from its compound. Step by step answer. Observe the reaction. Fe2O3 gives 2Al plus Al2O3 plus 2Fe. Aluminum reacts with iron oxide, Fe2O3. Aluminum takes oxygen from iron oxide. Iron is released. Identify what is happening. Aluminum is more reactive than iron, so it displaces iron from iron oxide. This is a displacement reaction. Check other options. Combination, not correct. More than one product is formed. Yes, we can see that Al2O3 plus 2Fe is formed, so this is not an example for combination reaction. And double displacement reaction, there is no exchange of ions occurring here. And decomposition reaction, there is not breaking into simpler substances. No substances are break or converted into simpler substances. So this reaction is also called a thermite reaction. Okay, highly exothermic, used in welding railway tracks. Okay, so this reaction, that is, note it down, this is important, this is called thermite reaction. What is thermite reaction? Fe2O3 plus 2 aluminum gives Al2O3 plus 2Fe. Why it is called as thermite reaction because a large amount of heat is released in this process and it is used. What is the importance of this equation or this reaction? This reaction is used in welding of railway tracks, and it is also highly exothermic. That means high amount of heat is released, hence it is a highly exothermic reaction known as thermite reaction used in the welding of railway tracks. Important points for exams: always check reactivity series. Remember, aluminum is more reactive than iron. Keyword displaces. Mention thermal reaction for extra marks if descriptive question. Common mistakes to avoid: calling it a combination reaction, thinking it as a double displacement reaction, not identifying which element is more reactive. Final exam or final answer board format: in the reaction Fe2O3 plus 2Al gives Al2O3 plus 2Fe. Aluminum being more reactive than iron displaces iron from iron oxide to form aluminum oxide and iron. Therefore, it is a displacement reaction. Correct option, displacement reaction. And in this type of questions, we need to study about the reactivity series. Let's look for the reactivity series. Provide me the reactivity series of important elements. Yes, this is the reactivity series, but hydrogen is also there. Please stop calling me a zebra, instead trying learning how copper saves gold. This is the reactivity series, and first one, potassium. What is the order? This is most reactive to least reactive. The elements on the top are most reactive and elements on the below or bottom are least reactive. If potassium and sodium is compared, potassium is more reactive, and sodium and calcium is considered, sodium is more reactive. Okay, on going from bottom to top, the reactivity increases. What is the order? We have to by heart this order: potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, lead, copper, mercury, silver, gold. This is a mnemonics to study this order: potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, tin, lead, hydrogen, copper, silver, gold. Please stop calling me a zebra, instead try learning how copper saves gold. Please for potassium, PP. Stop sodium, calling calcium, me magnesium, a zebra, a aluminum is a zinc, instead for iron, and try tin, learning lead, and how hydrogen, copper saves silver, gold. G. This is a good mnemonics. Please stop calling me a zebra, instead try learning how copper saves gold. Here highly reactive metals on the top are potassium, sodium and calcium react violently with water stored in oil. Okay, this sodium, potassium and calcium are very reactive and hence they react violently with water. So for the laboratory purposes they are always stored in the oil. Moderately reactive metals comes in the middle, that includes magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, etc. Magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, they are moderatively reactive. And least reactive metals are copper, silver, gold, etc. They do not react easily, found in free or native state. Position of hydrogen, important. Hydrogen is placed between lead and copper. Okay, here it is lead and copper. So hydrogen comes in a position between lead and copper. Metals above hydrogen react with acids to produce hydrogen gas. We have studied earlier that metals when compared with the when reacts with acids form salt plus hydrogen gas. This hydrogen, what is the peculiarity or characteristics of this hydrogen gas? It burns with, or it produces which sound? Pop sound. Pop sound. Important points for exams. Always write in correct order, top to bottom. Remember, higher metal is more reactive, lower metal is less reactive. Use in displacement reaction, corrosion concepts, and extraction of metals. These are nothing important. Again, reactivity series is potassium greater than, sodium greater than, calcium greater than, magnesium greater than, aluminum greater than, zinc greater than, iron greater than, lead greater than, copper greater than, mercury greater than, silver greater than, gold. Metals at the top are highly reactive, while those at the bottom are least reactive. Okay, this question is clear. Hope we can go to question number 3. What is question number 3? What happens when dilute hydrochloric acid is added to iron filings? Tick the correct answer. Hydrogen gas and iron chloride are produced. Chlorine gas and iron hydroxide are produced. No reaction takes place. Iron salt and water are produced. We have studied this question also in our earlier classes. What happens when dilute hydrochloric acid is added to iron filings? You must identify the correct products formed. This is an example for metals combining with acid reaction. And when metals combines with acid, what is formed? Hydrogen gas is formed with a pop sound. Also, salt is formed. In this question, we can say that hydrogen gas is formed. So, in the given options, there is only one option that shows hydrogen gas. And hydrogen gas and iron chloride are produced. Option A. So, option A will be the right answer. Metal plus acid gives salt plus hydrogen gas. Metals above hydrogen in the reactivity series like iron reacts with the acids. They displace hydrogen gas. Step by step answer. Identify reactants. Iron filings is iron, Fe or metal. Dilute hydrochloric acid, HCl, it's an acid. Apply the general reaction. Iron plus HCl gives salt plus hydrogen. Identify the salt formed. Iron plus hydrochloric acid is iron chloride. Specifically, FeCl2 or iron 2 chloride is formed. Write balanced equation. Iron plus 2HCl gives FeCl2 plus hydrogen. Observations very important for exam. Bubbles of hydrogen gas are formed. The solution becomes light green due to FeCl2. Okay, here the iron chloride, that is FeCl2, is light green in color, and the reaction is also exothermic, heat is released, and bubbles of hydrogen gas is formed. So hydrogen gas and iron chloride are produced is the correct option. Important points for this exam is metals combines with acid to form salt and hydrogen. Iron forms FeCl2. Here not FeCl3 is not formed, rather than FeCl2 is formed. That is very important to note. Mention gas evolution, hydrogen for full marks. Write balanced equation. Common mistakes to avoid. Writing FeCl3 instead of FeCl2. The formula for iron chloride is FeCl2 and not FeCl3. Forgetting to balance equation, saying no reaction or iron is reactive. Missing hydrogen gas formation. We have studied reactivity series also. So when hydrogen and iron is compared, we said that iron comes in the top. So iron is more reactive than hydrogen. So iron displaces hydrogen from HCl and hydrogen is freely released and it combines with chlorine to form iron chloride. It is also an example for displacement reaction. So when dilute hydrochloric acid is added to iron filings, iron reacts with the acid to form iron 2 chloride and hydrogen gas. Why it is called as iron 2 chloride? Because here it exists as Fe2 plus and 2Cl minus, or Fe2 plus and Cl minus. Since there is 2 atoms of chlorine, we can say that 2 atoms of Cl minus is formed. So here iron 2 chloride means the oxidation state of iron is Fe2 plus. So it is called as FeCl2 or iron 2 chloride. Hydrogen gas is evolved and the solution turns light green due to the formation of FeCl2. Correct option. Hydrogen gas and iron chloride are produced. Okay. Then let's go to the question number 4. Okay. What is question number 4? What is balanced chemical equation? Why should chemical equations be balanced? We need a correct explanation for this, right? Let's look. What is a balanced chemical equation? And we also need definition and reason. The key concept of this question is the balancing of chemical reaction is based on the law of conservation of mass. Okay. If we get a question asking that on which basis, on which law this balancing of chemical reaction takes place, we have to answer it as law of conservation of mass. That is, mass can neither be created nor be destroyed, it can only be changed from one form to another. That's energy. Mass can neither be created nor be destroyed in a chemical reaction. That is law of conservation of mass. So in any reaction, number of atoms of each element on LHS is equal to RHS. So in a balanced chemical equation, the number of atoms on LHS is equal to number of atoms on RHS. What is a chemical equation? A chemical equation represents a chemical reaction using symbols and formulas. So what is chemical reaction? A chemical reaction represents that chemical, what is a chemical equation? Then we can go to balanced chemical equation. So when coming to chemical equation, what is chemical equation? Chemical equation is something that shows or that represents a chemical reaction in terms of formulas and symbols. For example, H2 plus O2 gives H2O. Here it is not balanced, it is just an equation. What happens in balanced chemical equation? A balanced chemical equation is one in which the number of atoms of each element is equal on both sides, that is on LHS and RHS. The particular element, the atoms of that particular element remains same. So this reaction, this H2 plus O2 gives H2O, that is a chemical equation. When it comes into balanced chemical equation, it becomes as, here what is the difference? Here 2 atoms of oxygen is there, but here it is only 1 atom of oxygen is present on the RHS. So when we are balancing it, we will get it as 2H2 plus O2 gives 2H2O. Here 2H2 plus O2 gives 2H2O. Here 4 atoms of hydrogen, here also 4 atoms of hydrogen, here 2 atoms of oxygen, here also 2 atoms of oxygen. Here 2O na. So hydrogen is equal to 4 atoms on both sides, oxygen 2 atoms on both sides. Why should equations be balanced? Reason number 1, law of conservation of mass. Matter is neither created nor destroyed. So atom must be equal on both sides. And correct representation shows the actual ratio of reactants and products. Helps in calculations required for numerical problems used in stoichiometry. Stoichiometry you will study in later classes. So what is the importance for this balancing a chemical reaction? First one, to make law of conservation of mass is suitably applied there, and second, to show the correct representation or the actual ratio of reactants and the products, and third one, to helps in calculations, that is in stoichiometry and for calculation of numerical problems. Important points for exams: use keywords equal number of atoms, law of conservation of mass. Always give one example, mention both reasons carefully. We have studied that H2 plus O2 gives H2O, and that is a chemical equation, and balancing of that chemical equation gives 2H2 plus O2 gives 2H2O. Common mistakes to avoid: not mentioning law of conservation. Always important must be given for this law of conservation of mass. Final answer, bold format. A balanced chemical equation is an equation in which the number of atoms of each element is equal on both the reactant and product side. For example, 2H2 plus O2 gives 2H2O. Chemical equation should be balanced to satisfy the law of conservation of mass, which states that mass can neither be created nor be destroyed in a chemical reaction. It also helps in representing the correct proportions of reactants and products. Also, it is essential for calculating numerical problems, and also it is used in stoichiometry. Okay, let's move into the next question. Question number 5. What is question number 5? Translate the following statements into chemical equations and then balance them. First one, hydrogen gas combines with nitrogen to form ammonia. Okay, it is saying that hydrogen gas H2 plus N2 gives NH3. Okay, some questions are being missing in this. Silver chloride. Oh, this is the answer for question number 7, I think. Wait just 1 minute. This must be the question or answer of, I think it is of 7th question. Okay, we can read the question. First one, hydrogen gas combines with the nitrogen to form ammonia. Second one, hydrogen sulfide gas burns in air to give water and sulfur dioxide. And third question is, barium chloride reacts with aluminum sulfate to give aluminum chloride and a precipitate of barium sulfate. Okay, now it's okay. We can see that hydrogen plus nitrogen gives ammonia, H2 plus N2 gives NH3. Now we need to balance the equation. Nitrogen 2 on the left, so make 2 NH3. So when we write here 2NH3, then nitrogen gets balanced. Then how many hydrogens are there? 2H3 na. Therefore it will be 6 atoms of hydrogen. So here we have to write 3. 3H2 means 6 hydrogen. So 3H2 plus N2 gives 2NH3. N2 plus 3H2 gives 2NH3 is the balanced equation. Second is hydrogen sulfide gas burns in air to give water and sulfur dioxide. So hydrogen sulfide plus oxygen gives water plus sulfur dioxide. Burning indicates addition, reaction with the oxygen or reaction with the oxygen. So hydrogen sulfide, the formula is H2S. H2S plus O2 gives H2O, water plus sulfur dioxide. Here hydrogen atoms of hydrogen is same, sulfur is same, and there are 3 oxygen atoms. So what should we do? Sulfur 1 on both sides, hydrogen 2 on both sides. Right side 3 oxygens are there. Sorry, on the left side we have 2 oxygen, but in right side we have 3 oxygen. So use 3 by 2. Multiply entire equation by 2. So what happens? 2H2S plus 3O2 gives 2H2O plus 2SO2. Okay. Or we know that here we have 3 atoms of oxygen, right? So here we have to get 3 oxygen atoms. To make 3 oxygen atoms, what we can do? We can here 1.5 O2. 1.5 O2 means 1.5 into 2, that means 3 oxygens. 3 oxygen atoms are developed. Since 1.5 is not a correct or accurate numerical, we can't write a reaction like 1.5 O2 plus 1.3 H2S gives 1.1 H2O plus 3 SO2. Like that we cannot write. We have to make it as a whole figure. Therefore, for making that 1.5 a numerical digit, we have to multiply it with 2. This 1.5 we can write as 3 by 2 na. So to make that a round figure, we multiply the whole equation by 2. So what happens? 2H2S plus 2 into 3 by 2 O2. Therefore 2 and 2 gets cancelled and there will be 3 O2 plus 2H2O plus 2SO2. Barium chloride reacts with aluminum sulfate to give aluminum chloride and barium sulfate. Barium chloride, the formula is BaCl2. Aluminum sulfate is Al2SO4 thrice, gives AlCl3 plus barium sulfate. Balance. Here SO4 is SO4 thrice. So 3 sulfur atoms and 12 oxygen atoms are there. Okay. So what happens here? Here, since there is 3 SO4, hence we must give 3 barium sulfate, 3 BaSO4. Then only we will get 3 sulfur and 12 oxygen atoms. So barium 3 and so whenever we write as 3 BaSO4, what happens? There are 3 atoms of barium. So for balancing that we will give 3 here. So 3 BaCl2 plus Al2SO4 thrice gives AlCl3 plus 3 BaSO4. Here there are 2 aluminum atoms. So we have to give here 2 AlCl3. So 2 AlCl3, that means 2 atoms of aluminum and 6 atoms of chlorine. Since we have given here 3 BaCl2, 3 into 2, 6 chlorine atoms are there. So the reaction will be balanced. That means 3 BaCl2 plus Al2SO4 thrice gives 2 AlCl3 plus 3 barium sulfate. Okay. And the last reaction is potassium metal reacts with the water to give potassium hydroxide and hydrogen gas. Here potassium, what is the chemical name of potassium? K. K plus water, H2O gives KOH plus hydrogen. For balancing, there are 2 atoms of potassium, that is same. oxygen atoms remain same, but here are 3 hydrogen atoms, but here are only 2 hydrogen atoms. So like we have done in the second, here also we requires 1.5 H2O. So potassium 2 KOH. For balancing we will write it as 2 KOH, and water also 2, and hydrogen is 1. So balanced equation is 2K plus 2 H2O gives 2 KOH plus hydrogen. Important points for exams. Always write correct chemical formulas first. Balance in order: metals, non-metals, hydrogen and oxygen last. Use coefficients, not subscripts. Write state symbols if asked. Example: gas, aqueous, solid, etc. Final answer. And this is the 6th question. No, this is a final answer for board format. That is the balanced equations. N2 plus 3H2 gives 2NH3. 2H2S plus 3O2 gives 2H2O plus 2SO2. 3BaCl2 plus Al2SO4 thrice gives 2AlCl3 plus 3BaSO4. 2K plus 2H2O gives 2KOH plus H2. So these are all the balanced chemical equations that have been asked in the question. Next we can go to the 6th question. Now I can teach you a shortcut method to balance any equation in under 30 seconds. Okay, let's look. Okay. "30-second shortcut to balance any chemical equation." Core idea: balance in a smart order so you avoid confusion and save time. Order to follow: metals, non-metals, hydrogen, oxygen. So always start balancing metals, then non-metals, then hydrogen, and then oxygen. Step by step method: write the skeletal or unbalanced equation. So first we have to write the normal chemical equation. For example, Fe plus H2O gives Fe3O4 plus hydrogen. Next, balance the most complex compound first. Here the most complex compound is Fe3O4. So here are 3 atoms of iron, so we can write 3Fe. That is, here 3Fe plus H2O gives Fe3O4 plus hydrogen. Then balance oxygen. Since iron is balanced and hydrogen is also balanced, last we have to balance oxygen. How many oxygen is on the right side? 4. How many oxygen on the left side? So make it 4H2O. So oxygen get balanced. Then how many, since here is 4H2O, how many atoms of hydrogen is there? 8. So to make it balance here, we can write it as 4H2. Fe3O4 has 4 oxygen, need 4H2O. So we write here 4H2O. Balance hydrogen. Left side 4 into 2, 8 hydrogens are there. So right we need 4 hydrogen. So we write 3Fe plus 4H2O gives Fe3O4 plus 4H2. So it is easy, somewhat easy. So you have to practice a lot of questions regarding this balancing of chemical reaction to make it more comfortable. Anyway, there will be a question that will be asked in the board exam relating to this balanced chemical equation. This all no need for this all. Okay. Next question is 6 and 4. 6th question. Oh, here also we have to balance a chemical equation balance the following chemical equation. One is HNO3 plus CaOH twice gives CaNO3 twice plus H2O. Question interpretation, you need to balance the given chemical equation so that the number of atoms of each element is equal on both sides. This is a neutralization reaction. Acid plus base gives salt plus water. While balancing, keep polyatomic ions, that is NO3 minus, together. Balance metals first, then hydrogen and oxygen. Step by step answer. Unbalanced. HNO3 plus CaOH twice gives CaNO3 twice plus water. Calcium is already balanced. Here only one atom of calcium, here also one atom of calcium. NO3, right side has 2 NO3, so we need to write 2 HNO3. Then only 2 HNO3 and NO3 twice will be equal. So we write here 2 HNO3. 2 HNO3 plus CaOH twice gives CaNO3 twice plus water. Hydrogen on the left side is 2 from acid, and hydrogen on the from the base is also 2. So we will get it as total 4 hydrogen atoms on LHS. So for making it 4 on RHS, we have to write here 2 H2O. 2 H2O means 4 atoms of hydrogen, and hence we will get 2 oxygen here. 2 HNO3 plus CaOH twice gives CaNO3 twice plus 2 H2O. This is a balanced chemical equation. Here 1 atom of calcium, 1 atom of calcium, then NO3 twice, NO3 2 times is there, therefore that is also balanced. Then hydrogen 2 plus 2, 4 hydrogen atoms are there. Then coming to oxygen, 2 oxygen, here also 2 oxygen is there. From calcium hydroxide, COH twice, 2 oxygen atoms are there. So it is a balanced chemical equation. 2 HNO3 plus COH twice gives CaNO3 twice plus 2 H2O. Important points for exam: treat NO3 minus as a unit. Neutralization always forms salt and water. Since this is an example for neutralization reaction, because what are neutralization reaction? Those reactions in which acid combines with the base to form salt and water. Here look, HNO3 is an acid, calcium hydroxide is a base. So acid combines with the base to form salt. It is the corresponding salt formed between the reaction between HNO3 and calcium hydroxide, or acid and base. This salt is formed also, water is also formed. So acid combines with the base to form salt plus water. And while balancing, if we get this NO3 NO3 twice like this, all NO3 minus ions, then we have to treat NO3 minus as a unit. Since we consider this NO3 as a unit now, he say that there are 2 or twice NO3 is there, so we have balanced it directly by giving 2 to HNO3. Common mistakes: forgetting to balance nitrate group, writing wrong formula of calcium nitrate. Final answer, board format: 2 HNO3 plus CaOH twice gives CaNO3 twice plus 2 H2O. And second one is NaOH plus H2SO4 gives Na2SO4 plus water. This is also an example for neutralization reaction. Here alkali or base combines with this acid to form the corresponding salt Na2SO4 plus water. Look here, first we can balance metals. Here how many atoms of sodium are there? 2 atoms of sodium are there. So we can write here 2 NaOH. So sodium gets balanced on both sides. Then coming to sulfur, SO4, same SO4 is here, same SO4 is here, since that is balanced. Since here is 2 NaOH, how many hydrogen atoms are there? There is 2, there is also 2. Therefore, total 4 hydrogen atoms are there. So we can write here 2. Then there will be 4 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen. How many oxygen atoms are there? Since we write here 2 NaOH, there are 2 oxygen atoms on the left side. Since we have SO4, we consider as a single. Here we said that NO3 minus is taken as a unit, and similarly we will take this SO4 minus also as SO4 2 minus also as a unit, a single unit. So we have only balanced 2 oxygen left. Since we balanced here 2 H2O, there will be 2 oxygen atoms also on the right side. Here 2 NaOH plus H2SO4 gives Na2SO4 plus H2O. 2NaOH plus H2SO4 gives Na2SO4 plus 2H2O. Okay. Next important point, strong acid plus base reaction. Remember 2NaOH needed. Common mistakes is 2NaOH plus H2SO4 gives Na2SO4 plus 2H2O. Third reaction is NaCl plus AgNO3 gives AgCl plus NaNO3. These two reactions are also examples for double displacement reactions. Okay. Sorry, this is an example for double displacement reaction. NaCl plus AgNO3 gives AgCl plus NaNO3. Here sodium, one atom of sodium, one atom of sodium, chlorine, one atom of chlorine, one atom of chlorine, and here silver same, Ag, and NO3 also same. Here it is already balanced chemical equation, so we don't need to additionally balance it. Atoms are already equal, just verify carefully. All are 1, number of atoms of each element is 1. Everything is balanced. NaCl plus AgNO3 gives AgCl plus NaNO3. Example for precipitation reactions in HCl is a precipitate. And the last one is BaCl2 plus H2SO4 gives BaSO4 plus HCl. This is balance the reaction between barium chloride and sulfuric acid. Here number of atoms of barium is same, 1, and number of atoms of chlorine is 2. Since SO4 is taken as a 1 unit, SO4 is same here, SO4 is same here. Here 2 chlorines are there, we can say 2 HCl. So what will happen? There will be 2 chlorine atom and here also 2 chlorine atoms. Since SO4 is balanced, then how many hydrogen atoms are there here? 2 hydrogen atoms are there, here also 2 hydrogen atoms. So here we need to add only 2, that will be the balanced chemical equation. BaCl2 plus H2SO4 gives BaSO4 plus 2HCl. You can see that BaCl2 plus H2SO4 gives BaSO4 plus 2HCl. And this barium sulfate is also a white precipitate. Okay, so 6th question is also complete. Now we can move to the 7th question. Sorry, we have completed the 7th question. Now we can move to the 8th question. Write the balanced chemical equation for the following and identify the type of reaction in each case. First one is potassium bromide plus barium iodide gives potassium iodide plus barium bromide. This is an example for double displacement reaction because exchange of ions between the two compounds occurs here. From potassium bromide, bromide goes to barium, and from barium iodide, iodide goes to potassium. So potassium iodide and barium bromide is formed, example for double displacement reaction. And the potassium iodide formed is an yellow precipitate. This is also an example for precipitation reaction. Convert the word equation to a balanced chemical equation. Identify the type of reaction. This is a double displacement reaction. Ion exchange between the compounds. General form is AB plus CD gives AD plus CB. Step by step answer. I formulas KBr plus BaI2 gives Ka plus BaBr2. Since first we can see the potassium, number of potassium on left side is equal to the number of potassium on right side, and coming to barium also same. And when coming to iodine we can see that here 2 iodine atoms are there, but here only 1 iodine atom, so make it equal. We can add 2 Ka, then iodine atoms 2 iodine and 2 iodine will be equal, but here we will get 2 potassium, 2 Ka, so 2 atoms of potassium is there. So to make it balance, we will add here 2 So 2 KBr plus BaI2 gives 2 Ka plus BaBr2. Since 2 atoms of potassium here, here also 2 atoms of potassium, 2 atoms of iodine here, 2 atoms of iodine here, when here it is 2 and here it is 2, and 2 Br is there, 2 bromine atoms are there, so here also 2 bromine atoms. So it will becomes balanced when here only 2 KBr plus BaI2 gives 2 Ka plus BaBr2. 2 KBr plus BaI2 gives 2 Ka plus BaBr2. Ion exchange reaction usually occurs in aqueous solution. Writing the common mistakes, writing wrong formulas. Okay, always remember that BaI2 is formed. Potassium iodide is Ki and barium bromide is BaBr2 and barium iodide is BaI2. Second is zinc carbonate plus zinc carbonate on decomposition gives zinc oxide plus carbon dioxide. Zinc carbonate, what is the formula for zinc carbonate? ZnCO3, and zinc oxide ZnO, and carbon dioxide CO2. So ZnCO3 gives on decomposition gives ZnO plus CO2. Here the number of atoms of zinc is same, number of atoms of carbon is same, and here 3 oxygen atoms, here also 1 plus 2, that is 3 oxygen atoms. Hence it is already balanced chemical equation. It is an example for a thermal decomposition reaction. ZnCO3 gives ZnO plus CO2 decomposition reaction. And third one is hydrogen plus chlorine gives hydrogen chloride. H2 plus Cl2 gives HCl. It will be easy because here also 2 atoms of hydrogen, here also 2 atoms of chlorine, but here only 1 atom of hydrogen and 1 atom of chlorine. So we will give it this 2 HCl. Then there will be 2 atoms of hydrogen and 2 atoms of chlorine. H2 plus Cl2 gives HCl. H2 plus Cl2 gives 2 HCl. So there will be atoms on both sides is equal. Also a synthesis reaction produces hydrogen chloride gas. This is an example for a combination reaction. Since 2 atoms combine together to form one particular compound, we can say it as a combination reaction or synthesis reaction. And combination type of reaction is combination reaction. And D is magnesium plus hydrogen chloride gives magnesium chloride plus hydrogen. Magnesium, what is the formula? Mg, and Hc hydrochloric acid HCl, magnesium chloride MgCl2, and hydrogen H2. When we write this, Mg plus HCl gives MgCl2 plus H2. When looking on atoms of magnesium, on LHS 1, here also 1, so magnesium is balanced. Then coming to chlorine, there is 2 chlorine atom, here only 1, so we will write 2 HCl, therefore 2 atoms of chlorine, here 2 atoms of chlorine, but here is 2 hydrogen atoms, here also 2 hydrogen atoms, then it is balanced. Only we have to write 2 HCl. Mg plus 2 HCl gives MgCl2 plus H2. Important points: metal plus acid gives salt plus hydrogen. This is also an example for neutralization reaction. Here magnesium is a metal, HCl is an acid. Sorry, it is not an example for neutralization reaction, it is an example for metals combining with acid to form salt and water, salt and hydrogen. So here we can see that magnesium is a metal that combines with acid HCl to form salt MgCl2, that is the corresponding salt magnesium chloride is formed along with the hydrogen gas. This is an example for displacement reaction. We can see that in reactivity series, magnesium is in the top and hydrogen is in the down. So the reactivity of magnesium is greater than hydrogen. So magnesium displaces hydrogen from HCl and forms MgCl2 and hydrogen. Always do 2 things clearly: write balanced equation, write reaction type, correct terminology. Okay. Next we can move to the question number 9. What does one mean by exothermic and endothermic reactions? Okay, this is the break time. Let's take a 10 minutes break. After that we can start this question. Okay, what does one mean by exothermic and endothermic reactions? Give examples. Question interpretation, you are asked to define exothermic reaction and define endothermic reaction. Give one or more examples for each. What is exothermic reaction? Those reactions in which heat is released. It is an example for X means what? Exo means outside, that is heat is released outside, and endo means coming inside. Those reactions in which heat is absorbed or energy is absorbed is called endothermic reactions. Some chemical reactions involves energy changes. Some reactions release energy, that is surroundings get hot. Some reactions absorb energy, that is surroundings get cool. Energy is usually in the form of heat or thermal energy. Exothermic reaction. An exothermic reaction is a chemical reaction in which heat energy is released into the surroundings. Explanation. Temperature of surrounding increases and energy is written on the product side. Example, combustion of methane. Here what we can see, CH4 plus 2O2 gives CO2, carbon dioxide plus 2H2O, water plus heat. Here CH4 is methane and oxygen is combined with methane to form carbon dioxide and water. This is an example for combustion of methane, and here heat is released, and hence it is an example for exothermic reaction. Heat is produced, reaction is exothermic. Another example is respiration, that is glucose breakdown. The equation is not given here, we can study it after this question. Endothermic reaction. Definition. An endothermic reaction is a chemical reaction in which heat energy is absorbed from the surroundings. Explanation. Temperature of the surroundings decreases. What happens when heat moves from a hotter surface to colder surfaces? The heat moves from colder surface to heated surfaces. That is, surroundings get colder because we are absorbing the heat now. That's why surroundings becomes colder. Temperature of the surroundings decreases and energy is returned on the reactant side. Thermal decomposition of calcium carbonate. CaCO3 plus heat gives CaO plus CO2. Heat is required, reaction is endothermic. Most of the decomposition reactions are always endothermic reactions because for decomposition to occur there requires an amount of energy, maybe in the form of heat or maybe in the form of light. That's why we have studied about thermochemical decomposition reaction and also photochemical decomposition reaction. The example for this reaction is calcium carbonate decomposition to calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Heat is required and reaction is endothermic. Important points for exam, keywords. Exothermic means releases heat, endothermic means absorbs heat. Mention temperature change. Always give balanced equation example. Write heat on correct side. Common mistakes to avoid. Mixing up definitions, writing heat on wrong side, not giving examples, giving unbalanced equations. Final answer, board format. An exothermic reaction is a chemical reaction in which heat is released to the surroundings. Example, methane plus 2O2 gives CO2 plus 2H2O plus heat. An endothermic reaction is a chemical reaction in which heat is absorbed from the surroundings. Example is calcium carbonate plus heat gives calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. We can also look for some more examples for exothermic and endothermic reaction. More examples of exothermic reaction where heat is released. Combustion of carbon. C plus O2 gives CO2 plus heat. Combustion means anything burning in the presence of oxygen is called as combustion reaction. Here carbon we have said that, and also we have seen about Methane, combustion of carbon are all examples for exothermic reaction where heat is released. Here we can see that C plus O2 gives CO2 plus heat. That carbon is in the form of coal. Therefore, burning coal releases a lot of heat. Second is combustion of hydrogen. That is H2 plus O2 gives to H2 plus heat used in rocket and fuel cells. This is an example for exothermic reaction. Neutralization reaction. HCl plus NaOH gives NaCl plus H2O plus heat. The acid plus base gives salt plus water plus heat. This is also an example for exothermic reaction. Respiration. We have we have studied in the previous section. The respiration is also an example for exothermic reaction, but we doesn't get the equation there. The equation for this is glucose, that is C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus energy. This energy is released, and it is also an example for exothermic reaction. Then thermal reaction, we have said that this thermal reaction produces a large amount of heat, hence it is used in the melting of railway lines. Fe2O3 plus 2Al gives 2Fe plus Al2O3 plus heat, produces molten iron used in welding railway tracks. More examples of endothermic reactions. Heat is absorbed. Photosynthesis, very important. 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus sunlight gives C6H12O6 plus 6O2. So what happens in the respiration is always an example for exothermic reaction, but photosynthesis, that's always an example for endothermic reaction because their heat is absorbed. 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus sunlight gives C6H12O6 plus 6O2. Plants absorb sunlight energy. Then decomposition of calcium hydroxide, CaOH2 is plus heat gives calcium oxide plus water. Heat is required to break the compound. Also electrolysis of water, 2H2O plus electricity gives 2H2 plus O2. Here also electrical energy is absorbed, hence it is also an example for an endothermic reaction. Formation of nitrogen monoxide, N2 plus O2 gives plus heat gives 2NO, occurs at very high temperature like lightning. So in the time of lightning, the reaction occurring is N2 plus O2 gives 2NO in the presence of heat, leads to the formation of nitrogen monoxide. And dissolving ammonium nitrate in water, used in instant cold packs, and temperature decreases, which leads to absorb heat. So this is an example which we will study in higher classes like plus 1 and plus 2. We are dissolving ammonium nitrate in water. We doesn't need equation at this time. Just remember that this is used in instant cold packs. Exo means exit, that is heat exits. Heat is released, that is exothermic reaction. And endo means enter, that is heat enters. Then it is called as endothermic reactions. So at least 2 examples. Combustion and respiration are examples for exothermic reaction. Photosynthesis and decomposition are reaction for examples for endothermic reactions. Next is explanation for 10th question. Why is respiration considered an exothermic reaction? Explain. Okay, we have studied it now in this 9th question. Question interpretation. Why is exothermic reaction? Why is respiration considered as an exothermic reaction? First question, what is exothermic reaction? Say, exothermic reactions are those reactions in which heat is released or energy is released. What is the equation for respiration? C6H12O2, that is glucose, plus 6O2, that is oxygen, gives 6CO2, carbon dioxide, plus 6H2O, water, plus energy. Hence energy is released at the time of respiration. So respiration is an example for exothermic reaction. The question is asking what happens during respiration. Why it is classified as exothermic reaction? You must explain with a proper chemical equation. Key concept. Respiration is the process by which cells break down glucose using oxygen. This process releases energy, that is heat, and ATP is released. Any reaction that releases energy is called exothermic reaction. Step by step answer. Write the chemical equation of respiration, that is C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus energy. and explanation. In respiration, glucose reacts with oxygen inside the cells. It breaks down into carbon dioxide and water. During this process, a large amount of energy is released. This energy is used by the body for movement, growth, maintaining body temperature. So, as a result of respiration, a large amount of energy is released, and this energy is used for the movement, growth, maintaining body temperature, etc. Why it is exothermic? Energy is released into the surroundings. That is why body temperature is maintained. Hence, respiration is an exothermic reaction because heat or energy is released. Important point for exams. Use keywords. Energy is released. Oxidation of glucose is happening. Always write the balanced equation. That is, mention ATP or energy form if possible. Common mistakes to avoid. Not writing the equation. Forgetting oxygen in reaction. Writing energy absorbed, that is wrong. Not linking to exothermic definition. Final answer, board format. Respiration is considered an exothermic reaction because energy is released during the process. In respiration, glucose reacts with oxygen to form carbon dioxide, water releasing energy. That is C6H12O6 plus 6O2 gives 6CO2 plus 6H2O plus energy. The energy released is used by the body for various life processes like movement, body growth, maintaining body temperature, etc. Hence, respiration is considered as an exothermic reaction. Next, explain. Done. Okay, see question 11. Why are decomposition reaction? Why are decomposition reactions called the opposite of combination reactions? Write equations for these reactions. So, why is decomposition reaction called as the opposite of combination reaction is the question. What is combination reaction? A plus B gives AB is combination reaction. Two reactants combine together to form one product is combination reaction. What is decomposition reaction? AB splits into A plus B. That is, one compound or one compound splits up into its component constituents in the presence of heat. That is called decomposition reaction. For one, there occurs combination, and for another, there occurs splitting or decomposition. So, it is considered as an opposite reactions. Combination reaction, two or more substances combine to form a single product. And in decomposition reaction, one compound breaks down into two or more simple substances. So, they are reverse or opposite processes. Step by step answer. Combination reaction, a reaction in which two or more reactants combine to form a single product. Example, calcium oxide plus H2O gives CaOH2. Calcium oxide combines with water to form calcium hydroxide. And what is decomposition reaction? A reaction in which a single compound breaks down into two or more simpler substances. Example, calcium carbonate in the presence of heat gives calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. Calcium carbonate breaks into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. Why they are opposite? Because combination reaction, many reactants combines together to form one product, whereas in decomposition reaction, one reactant combines together to form many products. Hence, decomposition is the reverse or opposite of combination. Important points for exam, use keywords like reverse reaction, opposite processes, give one balanced chemical equation, correct balanced equation for each, mention energy requirement. In combination reaction, always energy is released, but in decomposition reaction, always energy is absorbed or energy is needed during that process. Common mistakes to avoid, writing same type of reaction for both, not giving equations, giving unbalanced equation, not explaining why opposite clearly, etc. Final answer, Bodek format. Decomposition reaction are called the opposite of combination reactions because in a combination reaction, two or more substances combine to form a single product, whereas in decomposition reaction, a single compound breaks down into two or more simpler substances. So it is the definition itself. Examples are example of combination reaction. CaO plus H2O gives CaOH twice. Plus heat is also released. No, sometimes heat will be released and in some cases heat will not be released. In this case, heat is released. Example of decomposition reaction. CaCO3 plus heat gives CaO plus CO2, that is decomposition of calcium carbonate in the presence of heat. Thus, these two reactions are opposite in nature. So we can say that the combination reaction is the opposite of decomposition reaction. Okay, 12th question. Explanation. Actually, this is the 13th questions. Some mistake has been happened to ChatGPT. Explain 12th question. What is 12th question? Write one equation each for decomposition reactions where energy is supplied in the form of heat, light or electricity. So we have to provide one equation each for the decomposition reaction where the energy is produced or given to that particular reaction in the form of heat, light or electricity. So they are asking for thermal decomposition reaction, photochemical decomposition reaction and also electrolysis. The question is asking you to write one chemical equation each for decomposition reactions where energy is supplied as heat, thermal decomposition, light, photochemical decomposition and electricity, electrolytic decomposition. Key concept: a decomposition reaction is a reaction in which a single compound breaks down into two or more simpler substances. General form is AB gives A plus B. But decomposition requires energy input. This energy can be heat in the form of thermal decomposition, light in the form of photochemical decomposition, electricity in the form of electrolytic decomposition. Step by step answer. Decomposition by heat, that is thermal decomposition. When heat is applied, compounds break down. That is decomposition of calcium carbonate is an example for such decomposition where calcium carbonate plus heat gives CaO plus CO2. This calcium carbonate breaks into calcium oxide and carbon dioxide on heating. Calcium oxide is also known as quicklime or slaked lime. Quicklime, yes. Slaked lime is the chemical formula for slaked lime is CaOH twice. So in this particular reaction, there is decomposition of calcium carbonate in the presence of heat, and it produces calcium oxide and carbon dioxide. It's an example for thermal decomposition reaction. And when decomposition by light, that is photochemical decomposition, we have studied about the decomposition of AgCl and AgBr. Decomposition of silver chloride, chemical equation is 2AgCl in the presence of sunlight gives 2Ag plus Cl2. That is white silver chloride turns grey due to formation of silver. Since this AgCl is white in color and in the presence of sunlight or photochemical decomposition, what happens? Silver is formed. This Ag is grey in color. Decomposition by electricity, that is electrolytic decomposition. What will be that? The electrolytic decomposition of water. 2H2O in the presence of electricity gives 2H2 plus O2. Double volume or double the amount is formed hydrogen or oxygen. Which element or which atom is formed in double quantity or double amount? Hydrogen, because 2H2, here only 2 oxygen is there, but here 4 atoms of hydrogen is formed. Electric current is passed to break the compound. Electrolysis of water, 2H2O, electricity passing gives 2H2 plus O2. Water splits into hydrogen and oxygen gases. Important points for exam. Always mention type of energy above the arrow. For heat, you should write heat or a symbol like a triangle. And you have to provide, in the case of sunlight, you have to write in the arrow sunlight. And in case of electricity, you have to provide in the case of arrow, that is, you have to draw an arrow like this, and in the arrow, top of the arrow, you have to write heat or sunlight or electricity. Write balanced equation. Always write balanced equation in the case of exam. Also provide the state or give the state of the substance while writing the chemical equation. Use correct state symbols, that is solid, liquid or gas. Remember, CaCO3 is broken or decomposed by heat, and AgCl is decomposed in the presence of light, and H2 is decomposed in the presence of electricity. Common mistakes to avoid: forgetting to write energy condition above arrow, writing unbalanced equation, confusing decomposition with the displacement reaction, and missing state symbols. Final answer, board format. Thermal decomposition, calcium carbonate on heat gives calcium oxide plus carbon dioxide. Is this balanced? 1 calcium, 1 calcium, 1 atom of carbon, 1 atom of carbon, oxygen, 3 atoms of oxygen and 3 atoms of oxygen. It is balanced. And calcium carbonate is solid state, calcium oxide is also solid state, and whereas carbon dioxide is in gaseous state. And photochemical decomposition, 2AgCl in the presence of sunlight gives 2Ag plus Cl2. Here also 2 atoms of silver, here 2 atoms of silver, here 2 atoms of chlorine, here also 2 atoms of chlorine. And in electrolytic decomposition, 2H2O gives, in the presence of electrolysis, electricity gives 2H2 plus O2. Here H2O is liquid and H2 is gas, and oxygen is also gas. So let's move to the next question. It is 13th question. Question interpretation. You are asked to explain the difference between displacement reaction and double displacement reactions. Also write one chemical equation for each. So what is the difference between displacement and double displacement reactions? Write equations for these reactions. Okay, so in this question it is asked for what is a displacement reaction and what is a double displacement reaction, what is the difference between these two. So when coming to this, what is displacement reaction? A reaction where a more reactive element replaces a less reactive element from its compound. It depends on the reactivity series. For example, A plus BC gives AC plus B. What is double displacement reaction? There interchange of ions happens between the two compounds. Two compounds exchange their ions to form new compounds. General formula is AB plus CD gives AD plus CB. Often results in precipitate formation and neutralization reaction. Step by step answer. Displacement reaction. A more reactive metal displaces a less reactive metal from its compound. Example is Zn plus CuSO4 gives ZnSO4 plus Cu. Zinc displaces copper because zinc is more reactive. We have studied about the reactivity series earlier. We have looked on the order. You have to study that reactivity series. At least that much elements reactivity series you have to study. Double displacement reaction. Explanation. Two compounds reacts by exchanging ions to form new compounds. Example, Na2SO4 plus BaCl2 gives BaSO4 plus 2NaCl. Barium sulfate is formed as white precipitate. What is the color of barium sulfate? It's white in color. It's white precipitate. Hence, it is also an example for white precipitation reaction. Precipitation reaction. Important point for exams. Displacement. One element replaces another, and here the reaction happens on the basis of reactivity series. And in double displacement reaction, exchange of ions occurs, often forms precipitate. Here barium sulfate or white precipitate is formed. Keywords to use: more reactive displaces less reactive, exchange of ions happens, precipitate formation also happens. Common mistakes to avoid: confusing both reactions, writing wrong example equations, not balancing equation, forgetting the precipitate sign. Always remember that inverted arrow sign is the example for precipitation, precipitate formed. Okay, remember this sign. So whenever you write this equation, then you have to mention this arrow and write here white precipitate. Even though you didn't write here precipitate, since you have shown here an inverted arrow, that already means you are aware that you know the sign of the precipitate, or you mentioned that barium sulfate is a precipitate. Final answer, board format. A displacement reaction is a reaction in which a more reactive element displaces a less reactive element from its compound. Example: Zn plus ZuSO4 gives ZnSO4 plus Zu. A double displacement reaction is a reaction in which two compounds exchange their ions to form two new compounds. Example: Na2SO4 plus BaCl2 gives BaSO4 plus 2NaCl. So you have finished that question. We can go to the next question, that is 14th question explanation. Let's tackle question 14 in a clear, exam perfect way. Question interpretation. You need to write the chemical reaction involved in refining of silver. Specifically, silver is obtained from silver nitrate solution using copper metal. Identify that this is a displacement reaction. What is the question here? In the refining of silver, the recovery of silver from silver nitrate solution involved displacement by copper metal. Write down the reaction involved. So what happens here? This is a displacement reaction. A more reactive metal displaces a less reactive metal from its compound. Since copper is more reactive than silver, we know that the silver and gold all comes in the downside. We studied in a code that has last saying that copper saves silver and gold. You remember that reactivity series order? In that we will get the last metals, that is silver and gold, in the last. So silver is less reactive than copper, or copper is more reactive than silver. So copper displaces silver from silver nitrate solution. Identify the reactants: copper, Cu, silver nitrate, AgNO3. Identify the products: copper nitrate, CuNO3 twice, and silver Ag. Write unbalanced equation: Cu plus AgNO3 gives CuNO3 twice plus Ag. Copper balanced, silver balanced, NO3 is not balanced. Here 2 NO3 is there, so we have to give 2 AgNO3. Then NO3 becomes balanced, and we have to give here 2 Ag, and it will becomes balanced chemical equation. Cu plus 2 AgNO3 gives CuNO3 twice plus 2 Ag. Balanced equation. Silver, 2 atoms needed, put 2 AgNO3. Final balanced equation. Cu plus 2 AgNO3 gives CuNO3 twice plus 2 Ag. Explanation of reaction. Copper enters the solution and displaces silver. Silver gets deposited as a metal. So copper nitrate solution is formed, and that will be blue in color. So what is the color of this copper nitrate? Yes, it is blue in color. Important points for exams. Reaction type. It is an example for displacement reaction. The reason is copper is more reactive than silver. Key observation is silver deposits on copper solution turns blue because of the formation of Cu2 plus ions. And common mistakes to avoid is writing wrong formula of copper nitrate, not balancing silver atoms, and forgetting reaction type, and also writing AgNO instead of AgNO3. Final answer, board format. Copper displaces silver from silver nitrate solution as it is more reactive than silver, hence it is a displacement reaction. Copper plus 2AgNO3 gives CuNO3 twice plus 2He. If you want, I can also give you a quick shortcut to identify the displacement reactions in 2 seconds during exams. There's no need of that. Just provide the reactivity series. Activity series for revision. So that potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium, aluminum, zinc, iron, lead, copper, silver, gold. Always remember this code. Please stop calling me a zebra. Instead, try learning how copper saves gold. This is very important. We will get all the elements from here. Please, for potassium as sodium, calling, calcium, me, magnesium, a, aluminum, zebra, zinc, instead, iron, try, tin, learning, lead, how, hydrogen, copper, silver, gold. Okay. Please stop calling me a zebra. Instead, try learning how copper saves gold. Metals above hydrogen can displace hydrogen from acids. What is the reactivity it is showing here? The top elements, the elements that are present on the top is more reactive than the elements present in the bottom. Or when we compare potassium and sodium, potassium is more reactive and potassium can displace sodium from the corresponding salt. Metals higher in series more reactive, used to predict displacement reactions. Okay, let's go to the next question. 15th question. What is question? What do you mean by precipitation reaction? Explain by giving examples. Okay. You are asked to define a precipitation reaction. Explain it using examples. Key concept. What is precipitation reaction? A precipitation reaction is those reaction in which a precipitate is formed. What is precipitate? Precipitate is insoluble substance. A precipitation reaction is a type of double displacement reaction in which two aqueous solution reacts to form an insoluble solid called a precipitate. So what is a precipitation reaction? It is a double displacement reaction in which two aqueous solutions combine together to form an insoluble solid substance, or that insoluble solid substance is called precipitate, and hence there is a formation of precipitate. We call that equation or that reaction as a precipitation reaction. Here what happens, ion exchange partners are there, and also one product becomes insoluble and settle down. Step by step answer. A precipitation reaction is a chemical reaction in which two aqueous solutions react to form an insoluble solid called a precipitate. For example, Na2SO4 plus BaCl2 gives BaSO4 plus 2NaCl. Here BaSO4 is the precipitate. Barium sulfate is insoluble, it is white in color, it is a white precipitate. Here the state of Na2SO4 and BaCl2 is aqueous, and NaCl is also aqueous, whereas barium sulfate is solid. And second example is AgNO3 plus NaCl gives AgCl plus NaNO3. Here also AgNO3 and NaCl are aqueous, and AgCl is solid and NaNO3 is aqueous. AgCl is a white precipitate. Silver chloride AgCl forms a white precipitate. It settles down in the solution. Important points for exam: keyword insoluble soluble precipitate. Always write aqueous and solids correctly. Use precipitate symbol. What is precipitate symbol? That is an inward arrow. Always write that symbol to show precipitate. It is a double displacement reaction. Common mistakes to avoid: forgetting to mention insoluble solid, not writing state symbols, giving wrong examples, confusing with displacement reactions. Final answer, board format. A precipitation reaction is a reaction in which two aqueous solutions react to form an insoluble solid called a precipitate. Na2SO4 aqueous phase plus BaCl2 aqueous gives BaSO4 solid plus 2NaCl aqueous. Another example, AgNO3 aqueous state plus NaCl aqueous gives AgCl solid plus NaNO3 aqueous. If you want, I can next explain the question 16, oxidation and reduction, in the same type of format. Okay. What is question number 16? Explain the following in terms of gain or loss of oxygen with two examples each. Oxidation and reduction. What is oxidation? Addition of oxygen, removal of hydrogen, or removal of electrons is oxidation reaction. What is reduction reaction? Removal of oxygen or addition of hydrogen or addition of electrons is example for reduction reaction. Question interpretation. You are asked to explain what oxidation and reduction are. Show them using chemical reaction. Key concept: oxidation, addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen. Reduction, removal of oxygen or addition of hydrogen or addition of electrons. Important, both always occur together, called a redox reaction. Step by step answer. Example, CuO plus H2 gives Cu plus H2O, that is copper oxide plus hydrogen gives copper plus water. Identify the oxidation and reduction. Copper oxide CuO is converted to copper, hence it is reduced because oxygen is lost, and hydrogen combines with oxygen to form water, hence addition of oxygen occurs, and hence it is an example for oxidation reaction. Therefore we can say that hydrogen is oxidized and copper oxide is reduced. Copper oxide reduced, oxygen is removed, this is reduction. Hydrogen combines with water to form oxygen to form H2O, oxygen is added, and this is a oxidation reaction. Explanation words: hydrogen gets oxidized because it gains oxygen, copper oxide gets reduced because it loses oxygen. Important points for exams: always remember, oxidation is the gain of oxygen or loss of hydrogen or loss of electrons. Reduction is loss of oxygen or gain of hydrogen or gain of electrons. Both processes occur simultaneously, then we can say that it is an example for redox reaction. Common mistakes to avoid: writing oxidation and reduction separately, making or mixing up definitions, not explaining both substances, forgetting the reaction. So what is the final answer for this question? Oxidation is the addition of oxygen or removal of hydrogen or removal of electrons, whereas reduction is the removal of oxygen or addition of hydrogen or addition of electrons. Example is CuO plus H2 gives Cu plus H2O. Here copper oxide is reduced and hydrogen is oxidized. In this reaction, hydrogen is oxidized as it gains oxygen, and copper oxide is reduced as it loses oxygen. Hence it is a redox reaction. If you want, I can also give you previous year board exam questions on redox to practice, that we can study later. Now we have finished the 16th question also. We have only 4 questions. What is 17th question? A shiny brown colored element X on heating in air becomes black in color. Name the element X and the black colored compound formed. What will be that? Brown color gets converted to black color. I think it will be copper oxide. We can say this has been mistaken, because instead of 17th question they are provided with the answer of 18th question. Okay, let's look at that question again, because we can go for the 18th question and we can get the answer last of that 17th question. So what is the 17th question? Sorry, what is the 18th question? Why do we apply paint on iron particles? The question is asking, explain why iron particles are painted. You must explain using the concept of corrosion or rusting. Key concept: what is corrosion? Corrosion is the slow deterioration of a metal due to reaction with oxygen or moisture. Moisture is water. That is rusting of iron occurs. That is, iron reacts with oxygen and water to form rust. Rust is hydrated iron 3 oxide. That is, Fe2O3.XH2O is the chemical formula for rust. Step by step explanation. Condition for rusting. Rusting happens only when oxygen is present or water moisture is present. Chemical reaction, rusting reaction. 4Fe plus 3O2 plus XH2O gives 2Fe2O3.XH2O. This is the example or the equation for rusting reaction of iron. This produces a reddish brown rust. What is the color of the rust? It is a reddish brown rust. Effect of rusting. Iron becomes weak, surface gets damaged, structure may break over time. Role of paint. When we apply paint, it forms a protective coating. Prevents contact with oxygen and moisture. Without contact, rusting cannot occur. So, paint appears as a paint acts as a barrier or act as a protective coating that prevents oxygen and moisture from attacking the iron. Conclusion. So, painting prevents corrosion and increases the life of iron objects. Important points for exam. Use these keywords: corrosion, rusting, protective layer, prevents iron and moisture. Write the rust formula: Fe2O3.XH2O. Mention both oxygen and water. Common mistakes to avoid: saying for decoration only, not mentioning corrosion, forgetting moisture, not writing chemical reaction. Final answer. Board format. Iron articles are painted to prevent corrosion. Iron reacts with oxygen and moisture present in air to form rust, Fe2O3.XH2O. Paint forms a protective layer on the surface of iron and prevents its contact with air and moisture, thereby preventing rusting. Okay. Next, let's move to the 19th question. What is 19th question? Oil and fat containing food items are flushed with nitrogen. Why? Question interpretation. What is rancidity? How can it be prevented? Rancidity. Rancidity is a spoilage of food containing fats and oil due to oxidation. So, food containing fats and oils, when combined with oxygen or undergo oxidation reaction, leads to spoilage of food, and that is called as rancidity. When fats react with oxygen, they develop a bad smell and taste unpleasant. What happens when fat react with oxygen? They provides an unpleasant smell and also a bad smell. What happens in rancidity? Oils and fats react with oxygen in air. This is an oxidation reaction. Food becomes smelly, unsafe for consumption. That is a bad smell, and also it tastes unpleasant, and also it is unsafe for consumption. Examples are chips packets left open, butter kept outside for long, fried food stored improperly. That all gets rancidity. Methods to prevent rancidity using antioxidants, substances that slow down oxidation. So what is antioxidants? Antioxidants are those substances that act against oxidation. That is, they slow down oxidation. Example is preservatives. Also, we can prevent rancidity by storing in airtight containers. That prevents the contact with oxygen. Also, refrigeration, low temperature slows down oxidation. And nitrogen flushing, that is the question that is asked here. That is, oil and fat containing food items are flushed with nitrogen. Why? To prevent rancidity or to prevent oxidation, because packets like chips are filled with nitrogen gas. Nitrogen does not react, it prevents oxidation. Important points for exam keyword: oxidation of fats and oils is called rancidity. Mention bad smell and taste. Oxygen is the responsible factor. Write at least 2 prevention methods. Use term antioxidants. Common mistakes to avoid: writing it as bacterial spoilage, not mentioning oxidation, giving wrong examples, writing vague prevention methods. Final answer: rancidity is the spoilage of food containing fats and oils due to oxidation, which leads to unpleasant smell and taste. It can be prevented by storing food in airtight containers, using antioxidants, refrigeration, flushing food packets with nitrogen gas. So, in which all ways you can prevent this rancidity or oxidation? Either you can store this food in low temperature, that is refrigeration, or either you can pack or fill this food items rich in oils and fat in airtight containers, or you can use antioxidants, or flushing the food packets with the nitrogen gas, because nitrogen is inert or it's unreactive, so it prevents oxidation. Next, explain 20th question. What is corrosion and rancidity? Rancidity we have studied it now. What is rancidity? Food containing or food rich in oils and fats, when combined with oxygen or when reacts with oxygen, undergoes oxidation reaction, and the food becomes unpleasant taste, bad smell, become not suitable or unsafe for consumption. So such reaction or such process is called rancidity. Question interpretation: you are asked why are oxidation reactions important? Explain with examples from daily life. No, this is not the question. I have asked about the 20th question. 20th question, explain the following terms with one example each. Now we are missing the 17th question and 20th question. Wait. Explain 17th question. Okay. A shiny brown colored element X on heating in air becomes black in color. Name the element X and the black colored compound formed. Question interpretation. The question is saying there is a shiny brown metal X. When it is heated in air, it becomes black. You need to identify the metal. Name the black compound formed. This question is based on oxidation reaction. Oxidation is equal to addition of oxygen. When metals react with oxygen in air, they form metal oxides. Sometimes this reaction causes a color change. Since today's section is completed, we have to study two more questions, that is 17th question and 20th question, that we will study tomorrow. We have completed the activity section and also the main exercise that is given at the end of the chapter. Now we will study about the previous year questions.